You're welcome to the Policy Council. My name is Okpeyemi Agbaje. In this episode, we focus on security in Lagos State, and to some extent the rest of Nigeria. I have as guests this week two very senior officials in the human infrastructure of security in Lagos State. And together we would explore what the concerns are, what the solutions are, the legal issues, constitutional issues, and the core security issues. And hopefully we will try to give some assurance to our citizens about the safety of their lives and property. Enjoy the program. You're welcome again to the Policy Council. My guest on this segment, Talking Security in Lagos State, is Mr. Fola Athawari. He's the Executive Secretary, the CEO of the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. He's been Solicitor General and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Justice. He's been Commissioner for Lands. He's been Director of Public Prosecutions. So you know the security structure, the policing and enforcement structure in Lagos State very well.
Well, I'd say nationally.
Nationally. And you've seen the evolution of policing and prosecution and law. What are your thoughts as you reflect on how this system has evolved?
I think there'll be a general consensus that we've lost our way a little. Like we've lost a bit of clarity about what policing and law enforcement is all about, especially with the background of the Constitution that we have adopted. I think there's been a bit of, if you like, we're not in sync, and sometimes perhaps there's been an overemphasis on regime protection rather than law enforcement and security. So that needs, I think, to be interrogated quite deeply.
The debate about state police and all of that is something I'm sure
yes.
I've heard you talk about it.
Yes. If I put it in perspective, if we look at policing in terms of efficiency and delivery of service, then state police has to be an option. But if we look at policing in terms of power, the exercise of power by political forces, then perhaps they would support a central police. So it's whether we want an efficient police or a police that serves certain interests. And of course, you could break that down to all the levels. But for efficiency and control and accountability, state police.
Why state police? Why not local government police?
Yeah, you could have county. Yes,
police.
you could have policing at every level. But the question is the capacity of each level. That you have state police is no guarantee of efficiency across the board, because which areas you look across the country, how many states can manage even the areas they control, such as education, such as health, and so on. So it's no guarantee that state police will automatically result in every state in efficient policing. But we are saying that comparative to the centralized system, which has totally lost touch with real needs at the local level, it is the way to go. It is now a question of robust thinking, proper resourcing, strategy, and so on, and primarily accountability.
What you said hints at something more fundamental. Are you saying or implying or directly asserting that there's a more fundamental issue of the structure of the federation?
Yes.
At play?
No doubt about it. No doubt. I mean, let's look at it from a rather basic view, okay? Now, it is strange, in my view, that state legislatures can create offenses and yet not have a state agency to enforce them. And when you have a federal agency enforcing, it can do selective enforcing because there's no control at the local
level.
No
commitment.
There's no commitment to it, and the creation, designation of any act as a crime at the local level is a cultural issue. So that while drunkenness may not be a crime in Lagos, it is certainly a crime in Kano. And if you say federalism is essentially about a level of autonomy that recognizes the economic, social, and cultural components of the various parts. It does not mean that you do not subscribe to the centrist structure where the whole country is, for instance, under threat with fiscal policy, currency, external affairs, etc. But in terms of day-to-day law enforcement. The argument against state police has always been that they would be abused. And I think that is a disingenuous argument, because it is not about the abuse of power during elections that is the key concern of the man on the street. He wants to operate within an area that is predictable and secure. So that's, I think, the argument.
We'll take a break, Mr. Awale, and we'll be back right after this time out. Okay, you're welcome back to the Policy Council. I still have Mr. Thaware with me. Now, let's talk about the Lagos State Security Trust Fund. An attempt at sidestepping the problems
filling a gap
that the federal system.
Yes.
How's it been?
Interesting. Exciting. In the sense that, number one, I mean, why the trust fund?
Yeah.
Why would a system rely on donations to police
do a basic
itself?
function.
Yeah, do a basic function. So that again underscores the fact that there's
some
there's a dysfunction somewhere.
Yeah.
Now, and you've got maybe 30 years of budgetary shortfalls to cover. So it's a huge problem. But what you say is you look for a local solution to a local problem, right? So the trust fund is a response to, I would call it, the serial deficiency that the federal government has indicated with regard to police. And it borders almost on the pathological.
Almost irresponsible.
Yeah, almost, that a government would, whether unwittingly or whether deliberately, underfund its law enforcement. It doesn't make sense. And these are some of the things we have to look at when we're looking at how does a country function. So, but the governor's view was that, yes, we could wring our hands and basically say, well, it's a federal problem. Or we could look for a resourcing solution that would, I think, address two issues. Number one, resources, and police is a resource-based business. It's a daily business. And the second issue is a level of local accountability. That if we are the ones giving you the bulk of your operational equipment, then to some degree, even though strictly speaking, there's command structures, but you owe your local people a bit more emphasis, because one of the issues of state police is the non-stakeholder status of an imported policeman who's just on brief duty. It's probably why they stand on the street taking money, because they're not of the community. I'm sure if you saw somebody you knew, your friend's son or something, you would wind down the window and say, Ajide, what are you doing? And he would say, no, I was just borrowing it from him, sir. Something like that. So the trust fund, I mean, basically a response after the governor had discussed the issue of rising bank robbery, rising street crime, 100 visions with no plan from the center that designates resources to particular divisions. So it doesn't even understand what is going on the ground. We, as a trust fund, purely public-private partnership, no government subvention, but government contributions by way of equipment and all its cash and other assets from the private sector, wonderful nearly five-year relationship, I think has had a substantial impact on the state of affairs. The fund is able to respond to specific needs at the local level and so on. The question whether it's a sustainable, whether when state creates a trust fund, the federal government will become even more irresponsible is...
Or maybe irrelevant.
Well, irrelevant, it can never be irrelevant as long as it has control of command and control and deployment. So it can never be irrelevant. It has the capacity to frustrate any local initiative that's not backed by a constitutional provision. But
so the long-term solution going back to...
Oh, definitely. Look, there is no way we should move. A constitutional review in Nigeria is still focused on power, term limits. It's just silly. To me, that is silly. It doesn't matter if a man is in power for 20 years. If the structure within which he functions is not addressing issues, then it's just a waste of time. We should look at deliverables. We should look at what is the most efficient way of doing things. We've seen one of the problems of policing is the multiplication of agencies. FRSC, that used to be MTD, what do you call them?
EFCC, ICPC.
The one that is most, for me, the one that is most difficult to justify is the creation of a parallel police force in the civil defense. And yet, when there's a robbery, you don't see civil defense people responding to the robbery, it is police. So, and then we'll squander resources across these totally, and the FRSC has by no means improved safety on the roads. And when I was growing up, we knew only one person in charge of law enforcement in all its manifestations. We need to reduce the federal government's amount of its allocation and let the states take care of policing. Then federal can deal with cross-border cases, they can deal with kidnapping the way the FBI does, they can do with terrorism, they can do with currency forgery, and major issues such as that. But local issues in relation to laws of the local area, that must be state police. And until we do that, trust funds can ameliorate, they can intervene, but they can't solve the fundamental question of structure and command and control and accountability.
Mr. Arthur Wari, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My name is Femi Dojai. Welcome to the New Lagos, where things are improving every day. I work on the island and live on the mainland, but that's no longer a problem. With improved roads, I get to work faster. Sometimes I even leave my car and use the BRT bus, which is comfortable, fast, efficient, and reliable. After a hard day's work, the nights and evenings are even more fun. The streets are better lit, and the city is more secure, so I can catch my phone in peace. I pay my taxes because I want to continue enjoying the good things a big modern city like our Lagos brings. So it's my taxes that makes them real. Have you paid your tax?
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
This is still the Policy Council. My guest on this segment is Major Tunde Panox, retired. He's a special advisor on security matters to the Governor of Lagos State. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Major Panox, you've been in this position since the return to civilian rule in 1999 with 2 different governors in 4 different terms. How has security concerns changed in Lagos or in Nigeria over this last few years?
Well, let me start by saying thank you. You see, our problem is on security matters is that we need to understand and comprehend what security is all about. And we have been fortunate that each of those the last 2 governors, they understood what it means to be security conscious. The Constitution has tasked government that your primary task is security to life and property. That's Section 1.4. And each one of them, both Asiwaju as well as the current governor, who is a son, they both understood that, yes, this is a big job that must be done. It's a conscience job thing. Then, having understood, they now went about how do we action this big task. Asiwaju, in his typical goes, today, once I provide jobs for everybody, instead of you chasing 100 armed robbers probably per week, you probably end up chasing about 10 or 15 or 20 because everybody is busy working. And
so in his view, it was about employment, productivity.
And how do I employ NEPA? Once I do NEPA, then the factories will work and everybody will have opportunity to massively get employed. You also have to look at it. We are blessed in Nigeria because we are mostly Christian, Muslims, traditionalists, 98%. So we believe in God, created the world, gave us only one law. Don't eat that apple. We did, gave us 2 laws. Love me, your God, love your neighbor as yourself. From there, we now have all these massive laws. And like I said earlier, so it means man is the culprit. So if you can now address man to behave, then you will have law and order. Whilst we are not trying to have heaven on earth, but we should have some form of
Peace.
tranquility so that at least we can grow and catch up with the rest of the world. As well as doing proactive actions to stem ugly incidents from happening, they also now do reactive actions so that when it does happen, we can contain and address the issues. Governor Fashola will always tell you, plan for the worst, hope for the best. So that's where we are as at today.
Okay, if you ask most Nigerians, even Lagosians, what their preeminent security concerns are today, the first would be Boko Haram. Then maybe they'll say armed robbery. And then they'll say kidnapping. Let me hear your views on the vulnerability of Lagos to each of these, starting with Boko Haram, then armed robbery, then kidnapping.
That's why Lagos State government policy on security is, irrespective of whatever the laws say, please, 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 go assist the police to do their job. More so as you do not have duplicate to your life. So when we now grab the religious leaders, most especially, and our parents and our leaders, please, 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 work on man. So invariably, you find that things will get better. Even our policemen, once you have laid on medical for them, you have insurance for them, they are properly equipped. Because
so let me ask you again in specific terms.
Boko Haram.
Boko Haram. Is there a Boko Haram threat in Lagos State?
Some time ago, I put on my door, I put there, until 9/11, we experts, so-called experts of security, who remembered that if you buy a plane ticket, you have bought yourself a missile. And that's why I said, Governor Fashola says, go and plan for the worst, whilst hoping for the best. So both proactive and reactive, because we must always get it right. So we don't take
for you, the point is not whether there is a Boko Haram threat or not.
It's
we
prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Okay.
And pray for the best.
Okay. Let's take this time out, and we'll be back to talk about the two other legs of that tripod, kidnapping and armed robbery.
Okay. All right.
We'll be back.
When I use the footbridge, one of many spread across our Lagos, I can tell that the government truly cares, and I'm glad that I pay my tax. Now, the more money the state has, the more it will do for you. Do you pay a tax? I pay.
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. I'm still with Major Panox. We spoke about one of the concerns. Two others, armed robbery, kidnapping. They seem to be growing in Lagos State again. What is Lagos State doing about this?
In fairness, all hands are on deck. Even His Excellency has directed all local government chairmen, our mayors, to hold monthly security meetings. And they bring in, like I said earlier, those our religious leaders, the police who are constitutionally tasked to do the job, then our neighborhood watch, our civil defense, our religious leaders, our market leaders, so that together they can now at least dialogue, talk, and impress on our leaders to please go down the chain of command and impress on our members of the populace. Please obey the law. Behave, use more the 767 to pass on information to the police who are constitutionally tasked to do the job, so that they can proactively stem. His Excellency is always saying the broken glass, whatever, you know, this teaching time saves 9, you know. So hopefully, with that in place,
Element of community involvement community
and
policing.
you know, then it goes down the chain of
How is the neighborhood watch concept coming up?
Everybody is a neighborhood watcher. You are a neighborhood policeman. So as far as we are concerned, unless you have duplicate to your life. So once we have that massive movement, if you go to ordinary Cotonou, before you check into hotel, the police already know you are there. If you go to Cameroon, most of this, you know, so, but we are so relaxed here in Nigeria. You know, I went to one of the workshops yesterday, and some of them were asking me, can't we force the landlords to be part of the CDAs? You know, landlords are CDA, we have Boy Scout, Girl Guide. Go and join. You must be part. You cannot live in isolation. Okay? So once everybody chips in little drops of water.
Let me take you to one specific concern of mine, Okada riders. We know that they're part of armed robbery. We know that they're a danger to security of life, the highest number of accidents. We know there is serious source of migration into Lagos. And we know they sleep. I've seen hundreds of people sleeping in a public place at night.
Yeah.
For me, it's a massive, and then the numbers that we hear is a massive source of security concern. What are we doing about that?
We are trying to contain them and work more with immigration. Immigration are complaining or lamenting that because the roadblocks have been removed, they cannot now have access to check the movement, the influx into Nigeria, both from Cotonou, Niger, and with the world recession, I mean, most likely His Excellency said, Greece, Britain, France, you know, Spain, they are absorbing. Now they themselves are in trouble. Italy. So the influx now is
into Nigeria,
more or
and
less.
specifically into Lagos State.
More or less. And when they come in, of course, they will say, because up in the north, Mali and everything, Niger, oh, we are northerners, we are Hausa, until we start to now profile and find, oh, my brother, yes, so that's the problem. I think Bayo, our task force commander, said that there are now colonies in Lagos. And we know, and in fact, which day? About a week ago, some of the information I got was, oh, they even come into Lagos in trailers, articulated vehicles, we call them trailers, covered. So you think they are bringing in goods and whatever, and come into Lagos, and then discharge into Alimosho, Koopa, and, you know, and melt, and before you say Jack Robinson, they are all Okada riders.
So Lagosians have to understand that the Okada represents a major security threat. Because the argument I get from Lagosians every time I express my fear, for some people, is that it's a source of transportation for poor people.
If we had done, open up rail carriageway, railways and things, you know, and roads like
focus
we have,
on transportation.
Especially rail, mass movement. You know, we probably will not be in this sorry state where we have to depend on Okada. That's why you find in Lagos, they bought a lot of taxis, the BRT, the buses, you know, they are there. Even water transportation now, we're probably going to go into that. And hope that by the time we finish the Lagos-Badagry thing, railway line, and also the Ekpe axis with the EPZ, and maybe things will start to go down.
Thank you very much, Major Panox. It's been a pleasure having you on the Policy Council.
Thank you very much.
That has been the Policy Council this week. It's clear that the issue of security of lives and property, better policing, is tied to the more fundamental questions of the structure of our constitution and the type of federalism we operate in Nigeria. I don't think there's any dispute that the concept of a centralized police trying to manage local affairs all over Nigeria has not worked, is not working, and is unlikely to work. Clearly, policing has to happen at a subsidiary level in our federal structure, be it the states, be it the local government, be it the communities. It's also clear that we must deal with the social context, unemployment, poverty, migration, All of those things that increase the security challenge in Lagos State and in Nigeria. At the end of the day, all of us must be involved in security. As my guest said, there's no stupid people to our lives.